just getting adjusted here. Let me do it like this. Can you do that? No. I'm trying to do my phone, so I'm trying to figure it out. But yeah, what's up, guys?
Thanks so much for coming on the It's Not What You Think podcast with John and I. We're really happy to be able to talk to you and, learn some of the information that you want to tell us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we're just kind of getting started. I've had this for about 6 months now, but I just haven't really been able to get it off going. I've had to move my podcast room, and I think John and I teaming up will be able to pump out content a lot more efficiently. So why don't you tell everyone that's going to be listening a little bit about yourself and what your specialty is, what's your niche in this knowledge, in this world that we live in, this realm. What's your expertise, my friend?
Well, I dabble in a little bit of everything as far as knowledge goes. As far as practice goes, mainly like Mexican folk practices, as far as like spirituality and magic. And then I've also taken a few courses for psychic reading and mediumship, just to kind of explore that avenue because it kind of goes hand in hand. So as far as that goes, I've done a couple hours of training and got a certification at the end. Nothing too crazy, but definitely a lot of experience as far as that goes. And then as far as the folk practices and stuff like that and shamanism, that's more so self-taught stuff. I didn't really need a mentor for that. It's kind of, stuff you can read up on.
It's interesting that you say medium because I just listened to a podcast about a guy who walked by this lady, and she had said something about him and sensed that he had this tremendous loss, and he had just lost his father, and it was eating him up. And she said, he says, "Don't worry, everything's okay." And she had passed off this information to him, and he was so taken back by it that he wanted to make a movie. So he made a movie with this lady, and he picked 100 random people that there's no way she could have researched any information about them in the amount of time that she had to meet them, because he just literally picked them out randomly, and she hit 100 out of 100.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, that's overwhelming scientific evidence that there's more going on than we're being told, and we're a lot more special than the elite want us to realize.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I feel like a lot of the stuff surrounding, as far as pop culture's view on this kind of stuff, it's mainly like, oh, that's not real, or like, very discredited view towards it. But I just find it fascinating that people still don't believe in this stuff, even though the CIA spent tax dollars experimenting with this stuff during the Cold War. And they found in their research that this stuff is real, but they also found that it's very ineffective for warfare. And that was their only interest. So that's the only reason they abandoned the project. They didn't even abandon it because it wasn't real. It just was not worth the funding they were putting in and the way they were trying to use it. And I'm not surprised it's ineffective for war whatsoever.
Do you know of Aleister Crowley?
Yes, 100%.
Are you aware of the big 77 Fest at the Pentagon on 9/11?
I'm gonna go no, but I'm gonna go ahead and guess that might be something with the picture with the big owl in the woods, with the like people meeting up in a big bonfire. Or am I thinking of something else?
I mean, I think it's all connects. It all connects to that type of Malachian, worship, where the ritual, where they believe attaching these numbers to the ritual, helps
Mm,
helps their success. But here's a little knowledge drop on you, and you can research all of this stuff. The pentagon is obviously a pentagram. It's shaped
Hmm.
at its star,
Oh yeah.
built on the 77th longitude, um,
Hmm.
at
So
high.
the theory of that stuff doesn't surprise me at all.
It was hit by Flight 77,
Hmm.
and then the Doomsday plane uh, that was above it, the mobile command center, the day of that call sign was Venus 77. And then the amount of victims on 9/11 was 2,977, 2,977 people.
So as far as the elite, let's say, using geometry and locations to, kind of implement some sort of or harness some sort of energy, whatever you want to call it, that's 100% real. But as far as the numbers you're describing and stuff like that, that sounds like a form of divination or synchronicities, if that makes sense. Because whenever events happen, any event, especially major events, they trigger a sort of, when people talk about the butterfly effect, they think of, oh, going back in time and changing something, and then, like, it causes this whole thing. But what people don't realize is the butterfly effect is happening all the time. You know what I mean? And there's patterns that you can identify to predict things or to figure out what has happened. And how we perceive that kind of stuff normally is cause and effect. So something happens and then we see the effect afterwards. But if people can figure out the patterns and numbers and shapes or whatever, they can predict a lot more things than just what's happening presently.
Well, I can tell you that those 77s were done purposely. Like, I mean, I guess that would be more of a divination instead of a synchronicity because you don't accidentally build any. I mean, I built houses. You don't accidentally build anything in a certain spot, and you don't
Oh yeah, for sure.
anything a
No,
certain.
that was done with intent,
And
for
then there's
sure.
no way that Flight 77, although we do believe it's a missile, obviously, but they tell you it's Flight 77, so the spell still works. Now, if you look up what 77 means in Aleister Crowley's stupid Thelemic religion, it's a power up for the spell. So they have all these 77s converging on the Pentagon at once, and they believe that it helps with their Malachian child sacrifice, mass ritual spell that 9/11 was. So that's why Flight 93 is, their Thelemic hello. So if you go on Reddit and you look up Thelema with this Aleister Crowley's,
Mhm.
they all go 93, 93. That's how they're greeting each other. Every single one of those planes, um, purpose meant as some mass ritual.
What
So
is that?
what do you think about that? When it comes to
Oh, shit.
um, well, what do you think about all these 77? Like what does that what
So
does that do for you?
I'm holding right here Aleister Crowley's book on the theory of magic and theory and practice, and this is a pretty big book, very big. Um, I've skimmed through it. I've read thoroughly some parts, but what I can tell you is, as far as he goes, he saw it more as a science, and then whatever people intend to do with it is kind of in their park, so to speak. And he would use a lot of codes to speak. So when he would talk about certain things, I forgot what the quote was, but he saw spilling seed as a form of magic and a form of sacrifice. So a lot of people would take that as, oh, he's doing like child sacrifices, but he was actually talking about masturbating with intent as a form of sex magic.
Right.
And that it all kind of dives into it here. But as far as like the elites and stuff like that, I 100% think they know what they're doing. Um, what they intend to do with it, that's something only they would know. But As far as the numbers and stuff like that, 100% is nothing's an accident. However, the thing about this awareness where we know what they're doing, but they know we know. And usually, you know what a psyop is? Of course, you know
Yeah,
what a psyop is.
definitely.
So the psyop behind it is scaring us away from magic, period, because they want us to see it as something that is completely demonic or something that is for evil people, so on and so forth. Where in actuality, it's a form of self-empowerment. But they don't want the masses to have access to this power or this self-empowerment. The goal of this book is to achieve apotheosis. Have you heard that word before?
I haven't.
So apotheosis, so the ultimate goal of a ceremonial magician, which is what he was, and there's this actually secret society book, and secret societies aren't very secret. This one's like hiding in plain sight. They have an invitation to it in the cover of this book. It's like if you seek the answers, like mail your like your name and your information to this address, blah 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 blah. But this is the Golden Dawn. So this is another. They're called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. The Golden Dawn is the book. So pretty much another society that practices ceremonial magic. But the goal of the ceremonial magician is to achieve apotheosis. What apotheosis means is, in Latin, I believe it was, or it might have been Greek, to become God or to become a God, or as the Catholics would call it, ascension. So what Jesus experienced, what the Virgin Mary experiences, Muhammad, whoever you want to refer to, that's their goal. They want to achieve ascension or becoming a complete human being in their total physical and spiritual power. So that's the ultimate goal of what he was doing and what they're doing. But as far as what their goal is, we're not going to know.
When you say there, who are you speaking of in specifically?
So for the people that wrote this book. But the thing about these books is they have spiritual practices, ceremonies, and stuff like that. But the thing about those it's like a science. What someone can apply to that, use that science to apply to, is totally up in the air. Someone could use science to make a nuclear bomb, or someone can use science to make a cure for HIV. So at the end of the day, I 100% believe that there is a secret society using this science to suppress and control the masses and better themselves. That's 100% real. And they speak about these people. They speak about these people in this book. There's people out there that have this knowledge and are not using it for the betterment of mankind.
Absolutely.
So, and they say in this book, like, and well, both of them, I think, if you are to continue on this path, you need to make a solemn vow to yourself that you are doing this for the betterment of yourself and mankind. But there's people out there that aren't doing that. And they're using these methods to conjure up dark powers or energies for their own specific gain.
Absolutely. And people, when you try to tell people this, they think you're absolutely insane. And, it's like, you really have to you have to just ask questions and get people to try to figure it out for themselves. Because if you beat people over the head with this information, you're losing friends. You know what I mean? It's pretty tough. And what they don't realize is that we love them. Like, we care about them. And it's like, they would rather believe people who are trying to literally murder them with magic and medicine and this evil Malachian method, revelation of method that they're obsessed with. They're absolutely obsessed with lying to you straight up, but telling you the truth through the revelation of method, which is pretty fascinating to me that they feel like they have to do that. And you don't know where that begins. That can be from every religious book to the movie that just came out at the movie theater last week.
Yeah, definitely. But as far as Crowley and those other people, I would definitely recommend reading up on those from a completely um what's the word I'm looking for? Christian free perspective. Because Christianity is the tool that's being leveraged in the psyop. And one thing I can tell you from reading these books is someone can do very dark things without ever calling up a demon. They could work exclusively with angels and achieve very, very dark things. And um, from what I've read, there's people that have done very good things using demons.
And what
Is
are
is
some examples of that?
so let's see.
And how do we know that's not a psyop? That's
Well, it's all about the intent, right?
don't want you
So
boy,
with
girl.
with demons or angels and demons, they both quote unquote want to help humans ascend to their highest potential. But the thing about demons and angels, what makes them fundamentally different? They're both very non-human. So they don't understand humans very well. That goes for both of them. However, the nature of an angel, they're higher vibrational, but that doesn't necessarily mean good. So a high vibrational emotion can be love as well as rage. Rage is it's a negative quote unquote emotion, but rage is very high vibrational. You can operate at a very high level. It feels high vibrational when you're feeling rage. You know what I mean? So as far as angels goes, they're high vibrational, but that doesn't mean they're always capable of good.
Let me ask you this: how do you know you're operating on a higher vibration when you're raging out? Like someone's in the car, they're raging out. How do you know that they're on a higher frequency, a higher vibration? Like,
So the vibration is about
is there some sort of proof,
Or
scientific,
it's
emotion?
it's it's
that,
high it's a higher energy emotion.
Okay.
So resentment is a lower vibrational emotion because you're sitting in it. You're sitting in it and it feels lower. You like once you become more in tune to these things, you can feel the difference. So with rage, it's very like it'll pick you up out of your seat. You are ready to fight. You are ready to break something. Like rage is a very like because it's making you get up and do things. Whereas resentment, you're sitting
yeah,
and you're sitting in it. It's a very different kind of anger. You're
rage
like just stewing in it,
out right away?
like being content versus ecstatic. That's two
Okay.
different like it's the same emotion, but it's different frequencies of that emotion or vibration or whatever you want to call it. But something else that's with mainstream spirituality that I want to acknowledge is being high vibrational isn't ultimately the goal. We're humans and we have a human experience. We're not going to be high vibrational on 24/7. So there's a lot of people that are borderline delusional because they're trying to maintain this like high vibrational like mentality throughout every part of their waking life. When in reality, it's about balance, and that's something I learned in shamanism. But and speaking of balance, that's pretty much when angels and demons come to play. So they're all about the balance. So someone who works with demons 24/7, I would not advise that to be a good idea, regardless if they think they're doing good. But you could just like working with these energies constantly, it just doesn't seem like it's a good balance. But for example, I have books on all of this. Just I've read it out of curiosity. I haven't done anything with them, but let's see. Obviously, there's okay. So to bring home, someone can conjure up a specific demon to recover emotionally from a setback, overcome thoughts that torment them, to bring peace to a home or environment, or emerge from a crisis unharmed. That's not bad, right? But then there's other ones that are like, let's see, to cause arguments and mistrust within a group. You know what I mean? And there's things that you can do like that with angels too. But the general rule of thumb is when you work with a demon, you're going to expect it to do it in the way a demon would. So what do I mean by that? If you do something that's kind of surrounding love, it's going to be a very physical attraction when it comes to fruition. When you find someone that this spell was for, or whatever, it's going to be probably a very physical attraction going on. Whereas if someone did this with angels, it would be more, you know, lovey-dovey.
Yes, Andres, does God like demons?
God uses demons himself.
Does he like them?
Would a father hate his own children? I think
father,
it's like think of it this way. Like look at nature. This is
some fathers sacrifice their own children. Some fathers kill their own children. Kronos ate his children, also, aka Saturn.
Yeah, but you can't really bring up like Roman pantheons when you're talking about a Christian god.
They're all the same guys. That's part of the psyop. Baal, Moloch, Saturn.
Someone can say that, but it's also one of those things where they're very, very, very different. Because in the Roman pantheon, there were gods that were dark, and if you worship them, it didn't really seem like a bad thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, whereas the Christian religion is very polarizing. And that's what I mean by that. Like, as far as modern Christianity goes,
But
where
Saturn,
what I'm
Moloch, Baal, El, Atat, Kronos, that's all the same guy, just from a different story, from a different place. It's all the same child sacrificing, eating God that these fucking elite pieces of shit fucking worship. So how does that tie in to Aleister Crowley and this magic that you think that these guys are wielding in like a positive way? Like that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Oh, they're not wielding in a positive way whatsoever.
Well, no, they're kidnapping 800,000
No.
a year and
What I'm saying is they're taking a science and choosing to do evil with it. They're taking legions that are willing to help humanity with whatever they please and choosing to do something selfish with it.
So where do the demons reside?
Hell. So think about it this way. This is what helped me digest it because I'm also I grew up in a very Catholic faith. If you look at nature, do you consider a tiger to be evil? Or a lion? Or a snake?
No. I think
it's playing a role.
Beings trying to eat and fuck and do what they would normally do. They don't really have a sense of right or wrong for the most part. They just protect what's close to them, you know. But like people, some of them sacrifice their own babies. The tiger his own baby, and then other tigers will freaking protect their babies. You know, I think, you know, it's all one of those, you know, complicated parts of life that, you know, we can't really ever understand. You know,
so
I definitely
what a tiger and a snake is doing, they're just living and doing what they need to do as is within their nature, but they're playing a role in a bigger picture and a bigger part of a balance. Just like a deer is, just like a tree is, what have you. So you can't necessarily hate the tiger for doing what it is in its nature to do. But what I can definitely be mad at is someone taking a tiger and using it to slaughter innocents.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Or a deer can cause some major damage too.
Moloch guy that these fucking trust fund dorks worship. How can he do it in any way? Like if he needs baby blood to continue to exist the way that he exists.
Who?
Moloch.
Moloch, aka Baal, aka Kronos,
Oh,
aka Saturn, aka
so there's
all.
a lot of mixed things about that. So actually, this book right here says that you should never, ever
Well,
deify a demon.
right.
Huh?
This is the Aleister Crowley book that you're citing, right?
Both of them actually. So most of what I've read says that you should never deify an angel or a demon ever. So you shouldn't put up a statue and worship that statue, because that would be putting them above you, when in reality they're your consort or they're your equal. Just like the deer is no better or worse than the tiger or the tree. So as far as from what I've read, there's nothing you should really deify besides God, which you do that. You can deify him, but you do it through recognizing that you are part of God as a whole. And so are they.
So
So,
one thing,
yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing that you said you were studying was Mexican folk magic.
Mm-hmm.
How different is that from the other magic that you're quoting?
So a lot of it. So this is like, as far as like Aleister Crowley and the Golden Dawn and stuff like that, they boiled it down to a science, like a like a wizard would or something. Like they don't really see the spiritual aspect of it.
Alchemy.
Like yes, they focus on the alchemy. Actually, yes, the alchemy of the soul, which is their end goal of the alchemy, is apotheosis. So that's their goal, is to find the most effective, no bullshit way of finding what their true will is, or their purpose here on earth, to execute it so they can achieve apotheosis, their destiny. So that's what their ultimate goal is. And that's what apparently that quote from Aleister Crowley means, is when they said, "Do what thou wilt." I used to think it meant, when I saw it from a very Catholic point of view, that they meant just do whatever the fuck you want. Like, sorry if I'm cursing. Do whatever you want.
Is what he means. That's why he beat the shit out of all of his girlfriends, and he was a womanizer and a sick, piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like,
So, according to his book, what he meant is finding your true will, or divine mission on earth. So that's what he's saying. As far as him being a piece of shit, then, whatever. I'm not going to claim to be a better person than him.
Over the bushes had a lot to do with why they pulled this fucking huge mass ritual of killing people during 9/11. So whatever his influence was, what it was on the Bush death cult was not good. It was very bad. Right.
Yeah, so a molecular engineer will eventually end up being the cause of the nuclear bomb.
I don't believe nuclear bombs exist. See, this is where.
Okay, let's say whatever analogy you want it to be. Someone who figures out that gunpowder is a thing and it can blow up. Just someone figuring that, whatever alchemist or chemist figured that out, subsequently is responsible for billions of deaths. You know what I mean? Like, like, I don't know what to say about that one. You never know what you're gonna unfold.
Is Rome, the complete Rome story is all just bullshit. So much of our history is hijacked and hidden, and we're finding out that the whole historical narrative has been completely hijacked and whitewashed. And that's why even the words that we say are a spell that we are constantly invoking every single day. That's why, when we put English words together, English letters together in a certain way, it's called spelling. That's why our Lush energy is like a river. It's like a current. And, actually they've set up this system to where all of our energy goes into making money, making currency. And on each
Hmm.
the river, there's a bank. And that's where all of our currency goes to. It goes to the bank. And they've done this on purpose. And every time we're saying football and baseball, we're invoking ball. We're invoking these demons. They've set that up on purpose because, they believe that, it needs to be done because they're so obsessed with worshiping these fucking child eating entities, right? And there's no getting around that, right? Because these guys are proven to be literally been fucking sacrificing kids and kidnapping them and doing all sorts of crazy rituals that go along with that.
All right, so tell us a little bit about Mexican folk magic. You're kind of backing them into a corner. Let's.
Right.
No,
So
not really. I've known about those things, but those are the things that I declared a psyop because they want you to scare you away from reading this book. I feel like you can't conjure up a demon unless you want to conjure up a demon. You don't accidentally conjure up a demon. That would be hilarious.
these guys bring up demons on purpose. These
No,
guys,
yeah, but you can't
Then
conjure
claim
up
it's a
ball by
coincidence.
saying football. You know what I'm saying? You
the
can't conjure up a demon by
about
saying Walmart.
solar system
Oh, man.
to lure your soul away from the system that is God.
Your attention is more effective.
Heliocentric model. It's in every single word. You could bring. If you study all the words and where they come from, you'll be like, holy fuck.
No, yeah, for sure. But like what I'm saying is your attention is more valuable.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Your
not
attention is way more valuable. Like I doubt there's
still
much power in the words without intent.
I'm still saying, hey, are we gonna play football?
Yeah, but like that does nothing esoterically.
But they believe it, and they've set up this.
No, based on what I know what would be way more effective. Um, what would be way more effective is orchestrating a mass shooting and harnessing the negative energy of people mourning that mass shooting.
I 100% agree with that.
So, based on what I know, I'm just letting you know. You talking about football and baseball is nowhere near as effective as someone orchestrating a
No,
terror attack.
it shows you how deep that it goes, and it shows you how they've covered it from every angle. They're trying to get everyone to speak English because they believe it's the Malachian demonic one world language that everyone needs to speak. That's what they believe. So yes, I absolutely agree with you that them jacking our loosh with all of these false flags, all of these false flag things are absolutely way more effective for all of their agendas. But all I'm saying is that it's every angle. Every single fucking thing is all this demonic Malachian fucking worship that these dorks do, and they act like they are Muslim, they act like they're Christian, they act like they're Hindu or whatever, so they can walk amongst us. But really, they all worship this child eating God, demon.
um,
Several names, and before, the Sumerians called them Atat. Same guy. Same dude.
so I want to circle back to that real quick, but I want to answer John's question about the Mexican folk magic. So, as far as how is it different? So, this is what I don't like about ceremonial magic. They see shamanic practices or voodoo practices or different folk practices like that as primitive,
Mm-hmm.
and they see their method as above that. You know what I mean? So that's the first difference that I noticed that I don't like. Um, they don't believe in animal sacrifice. They don't believe in offering wine or like water or whatever or flowers to an altar. They don't believe in that stuff. They see that as very primitive. Um, but that's what separates it so far. So, but as far as like Mexican folk magic, it's very tied into Catholicism and working with different saints. Some of which were alive, some were not. Um, but it involves working with the spirit world a lot, but mainly, obviously, the saints and the angels.
So it's similar to Santeria.
Santeria is like the indigenous magical practices combining with Catholicism and then combining with um, voodoo
Okay.
practices. So it has more of an Afro Caribbean aspect to it. That's the main difference. Whereas in Mexico, it's mainly just a combination of indigenous and Catholic practices. Because even before they were introduced to it, Catholicism is they're like the pagans of the Christian world. They're very like, as far as the rest of the Christian world goes, like Catholics look very like juju, like, what are they doing? Like lighting up all these candles and like with specific colors and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it clicked with the indigenous populations very easily.
Did they bring over like the characters that they worshipped before, like the snake god or
Who is that Abraxas? Is that
was it like
So
Quetzalcoatl or
as far as Guadalupe is concerned, I don't know if you know the story for that. So when the Spanish came over with the image of the Virgin Mary, um, supposedly it happened through the story of Juan Diego. So there was an Indian or Native American man who was going over this hill every day, and it was on the ruins of a temple for this Aztec goddess named, how do you say it? Coatlicue. And she was usually portrayed as, she had like a snake somewhere. She was pretty much, her whole thing was rebirth. She was a goddess of rebirth, a goddess of nature, so on and so forth, what have you. So pretty much he was sent over this hill one day and he saw this apparition of a Native American woman. And she said that they need to build a church, quote unquote, or a temple on this hill in her name. And when he reported it to the Catholic Church, they thought it was the Virgin Mary. And that's how the Virgin of Guadalupe was born. So people think that they named her Virgin because the Catholics thought it must have been the Virgin Mary when it was actually this goddess. I am a personal believer that this mother divine figure is something that transcends all cultures and religions, and it is the mother of us all. And whatever form she takes in to reflect back at us what we see in ourselves. So in this case, a Native American person. That's my personal belief.
Okay.
But what other people believe is it was this Aztec goddess materializing before him in front of one of her people, requesting that they rebuild a temple on that hill in her name. And then the Catholics thought it was the Virgin. So as far as that one goes, that's the most famous story in Mexico, of Catholicism and indigenous spirituality combining. And then we have Santa Muerte, who
That's
just kind of popped out of nowhere.
Kind of worship, right?
Yes. Anyone who has a career like a paramedic or a police officer, like anyone that's regularly brushing with death in Mexico will probably be working with Santa Muerte for protection. Also, witches and shamans work with her too. She's more so on the occult side, and she's been dubbed satanic by the Catholic Church, but I don't believe that at all.
And why not?
Why don't I believe it?
Because the Catholic Church is satanic.
Yeah, but
I mean, yeah, there's that too.
What the fuck are we even talking? I mean,
yeah,
of course,
and
he carries around a staff of the Kundalini with the Baphomet guys that Baphomet carries.
so the Kundalini energy.
what is that?
So that is actually inside of us all. And it's funny that you bring that up. So the Kundalini
Right.
energy, when it is awakened within us, we are pretty much achieving apotheosis at that point. We're becoming our highest potential human.
Right.
But it's not a bad thing. Kundalini itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. I don't know how someone could go through that kind of awakening and then just say, you know, screw all these people on planet Earth. I just want my money. I don't know how someone could do that.
I know, but it shows you that these guys don't even believe what they're telling you. Like, they don't believe it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Charge of like if the popes carry around the staff of the Kundalini of the power that's inside of us, and he's putting 666, and everyone's putting 666s everywhere in our science literature, even science, and the Pope doesn't believe in God the way they're telling you.
Oh, do you know what you're gonna like this. This is fascinating. So do you know have you ever heard of what are they called? It's this entity, it's earthbound. Egregore. Do you know what an egregore is? Have you read that? Have you come across that?
Sounds
so an egregore is an entity that is either born or has always been here, no one really knows, but it's an entity that claims this identity in order to harvest energy. So what I mean by that is, for example, there is an egregore of what's that? Evangelical church. There's an egregore for that church, just feeding off of all the energy of the people that go to that church, pretending to be quote unquote God. So that's one example. Another example is actually in a lot of these books, they have certain like methods and ways to avoid accidentally conjuring one up. They actually said in one of the books, they said, if you call upon so-and-so and you get the indication that they're asking for a sacrifice of some sort, stop what you're doing and just close whatever you were doing, because that is not them. That is something pretending to be them and then is trying to hijack your ritual. They literally say that. That's someone pretending to be this entity or something. That's something else. And at the end of the day, what they were saying is, if something, an angel or a demon specifically, human spirits is different, like working with saints and stuff like that. They do like physical offerings because they were from the physical world, but that's kind of the point. So angels and demons, they should not and will not require any sort of physical offering. And if they do, that is something else pretending to be them.
And what could that be?
No one knows, but what these things are earthbound spirits, and that's why they require an earthbound offering.
So could that be considered one of the Watchers?
I don't know. No one really knows for sure, like where they came from.
The fallen angels that are stuck here.
So pretty much when I was reading about it, they said that it was either born off of this entity that was made up, and more people were believing in this entity, and it was just born of the collective psychic energy of those people.
They like
they like created it collectively. Like for example, the devil we know today is not the devil that existed 6,000 years ago whatsoever by any means. The devil that we know in this pop culture is so new.
He's a psyop. He's a
So he's so new. But I mean, pretty much what they were saying is that this entity does exist now because of, this is the ironic part, because of the Catholic Church. This church was so focused on colonization.
that's
Damn,
that is
that's
fact.
deep.
They were so focused on colonization, they sowed this fear of this devil character that they ended up giving birth to it in a sense. And now it is a real being that is roaming the earth. It is not in hell. It is roaming the earth. And that's why it wants blood sacrifice. That's why it wants like physical offerings of some sort, because that's what keeps it tethered in this reality. That's what gives it more power in this reality. So, what do I mean by an earthbound spirit? I mean like spirits that are able to affect this reality, like move things around, like you know, even ghosts, like a human earthbound spirit will be able to move things around after they've been here long enough and accumulated enough energy. That's what this kind of entity is. But it figured out a way to get more energy into itself to become more powerful. So that's what they touched on as far as people making blood sacrifices and stuff like that. They're working with an egregore because a demon and an angel is self-sufficient. They are in their nature, so to speak. They are from the dimension they are supposed to be in. They only pop in, but they don't stay here. So that keeps them balanced. So when you're describing an entity that wants to take something from you, either by force or in a form of exchange, that is probably an egregore. And who knows where it came from, but ultimately, probably we gave birth to them in some way, shape, or form collectively.
Yep, Andres is perpetrated by all the Catholic Church is hell itself as a fiery pit. For all my research and everything that I've looked into, which I'm gonna say humbly, I would have a PhD easily, and with everything that I've read by now, but this place is hell. And you keep coming back to it until you pretty much ascend, with no regrets.
So
And
you know where you know how I said the devil we know today is not the devil that was before? The same
yeah,
thing is with hell. So hell is a relatively new concept that did not spring up in Judeo-Christian or whatever you want to call it, spirituality, um, until pretty recently. What it used to be before is that if you didn't accomplish or if you messed up in this life, you would go towards to a sort of purgatory situation, and they called it Sheol, I believe it was, and it was literally meant school. And what it meant was you would learn about your life and all the things you could have done differently, blah blah blah, before you would move on to heaven or whatever you want to call it. So even thousands of years ago, like hell wasn't a place that you burned forever, and it wasn't even a necessarily bad place to go.
it
It
was
was just required.
right. It was like you said, it wasn't permanent. It was like school until you ascend. And I think that's what this place is. And it explains the 2-year-old that was born that never touched a piano that can start playing Mozart, because in his last life, he was a composer. And a little bit of that trickled through. And I think that's part of the psyop that these guys have ran, is they get you so scared of living this one life that you better do exactly what they say, exactly the way they're going to tell you. Only they can read the Bible. Only, back in the
Mm-hmm.
king and the Pope could read the Bible, and you had to just take their word for it. And I think that's all part of the psyop to get you scared, and they get you, to leverage the scarcity of life against death. And it's like, no, man, it's like it's
Mm-hmm.
all this love and vibration, and this place is way more special, and like all of us are capable of mad
100%.
magic and superpowers.
Mm-hmm.
That explains these monks that, my theory, is that these monks are in their last life, and
More than likely.
they figured it out, and they're in a cave just meditating and training martial arts all day, and that's why they literally can sit in boiling oil and not get burned with their hands like this. They can walk on paper. The one guy can generate heat, which
Mm-hmm.
water with his bare hands.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
Mm-hmm.
to me, this is
I've seen videos of them starting fires with their energy and stuff.
yeah, it's absolutely insane.
So
That,
I actually heard about something that was kind of funny. They gave them what are they called, like LSD or mushrooms and stuff like that to people over there, and they thought it was either boring or they said, "Oh, I can achieve this just by meditating for like 2 or 3 hours." I was like, "Oh shit!"
that's really interesting.
They were
Wow.
like, they were either like, "This is nothing," or I can pull this off without this." Like what?
Yeah. See, now that's what I'm fucking talking about right there. That's
Yeah.
hell yes.
Can you go into what the devil was 6,000 years ago? I'm kind of curious about that.
So the devil. So there's two different ways because they acknowledge these earthbound trickster spirits that they would call, because like for example Satan, Lucifer, and they're different people, for example. So there was Shatan, which was the trickster spirit that would kind of test humans, and then Lucifer was an angel that would do God's dirty work, for example. Like he would just be the scapegoat for it all. He would be okay with it.
One other thing that I'm curious about too, who back then, who was like the lead guy? If you said the devil's like a modern creation,
In the book of Enoch, Azazel is the main fallen angel.
Also, well, you have to, if you go even farther back, Yahweh was actually part of a bigger pantheon in Sumeria. He was just the god of thunder, and lightning, and then there was other gods that were alongside with him. So there's a lot of theories that say that he just won and like somehow is the last one standing out of all these siblings that he used to have. But I'm not sure I believe that. I just believe that there's a higher one uniting force, and then there's beings underneath that, and beings underneath that, and it just keeps going and going and going until you get down to us.
So is God the one uniting force?
I would say it's more like the Holy Spirit. Like you can't, it's so beyond us that you can't communicate with them directly because it's in everything. It's
Right.
in the walls. It's in the desk you're sitting in front of. Yeah. So we would have to, in order to communicate with this force that's so beyond us, we have to go through these sort of, what would you call them? But pretty much to get to this.
they're like prophets then.
Well,
Like in the
yes,
opposite.
prophets too, but sort of like the middlemen, so to speak. So the angels and the demons and the saints, they're the middlemen.
Yeah, so it's like the same as Jesus, Muhammad.
Right, exactly. So that's what I believe personally. But as far as how do I say it? So as far as like the forces and the balance and stuff like that. So I don't necessarily think demons are bad, so to speak, and that's the real ones at least, because we already discussed egregores. But I still am wary. Just like I don't think a tiger is bad, but I'm not going to turn my back on a tiger. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you have to acknowledge the nature of what you're working with. Because if someone, for example, and this is something that comes up in Mexico a lot, where people actually know somebody that they can take you to who practices magic and can do something for you. If somebody, for example, is in, like, if you know a girl who's in an abusive relationship and this man is about to kill her. You just feel it in your bones. Like her face was so beat up, blah, 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 blah. In Mexico, you probably have the ability to take this girl to a witch who will say she's going to conjure up some dark forces to get this man away from her. Now you kind of go into this like moral dilemma, like, is this really bad what I'm doing, or is it good?
Yeah.
Because think about it this way, a gun is a gun, but what are you doing with that gun? And that's what they say in the beginning of a lot of these books. Like, if they say, they have disclaimers like, don't do this unless you would personally pick up a gun and kill this person yourself. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they want you to understand the extremities of what you're talking about.
I think you gave a really good analogy. Is when people, this is the way I think of it. When people start fucking with these demons, even when they think they're doing something good, like you said, you wouldn't turn your back on a tiger, but these things are like, in the sense of wild, still a wild animal, and you
So,
guard down for 1 second, you take a misstep, you underestimate them for 1 second, and all of a sudden they've slit your throat from the inside.
so what I think happens with them specifically, and especially in this day and age, and it has been, the humans have been becoming more and more accustomed to uh, instantaneous gratification, right? So the thing about demons, they work fast. They work very fast.
That's what
So
the Lima, all these Aleister Crowley people that, they're like, they're all dissing God, and they're all loving how these demons and these things that they've conjured up have helped them accomplish their goals faster.
so pretty much the angel and the demon's job is to teach us a lesson. Whether it's a good lesson or a bad lesson, it doesn't really matter to God or the Holy Spirit, whoever. Like, we just need to learn. So, for example, the gazelle is only able to run as fast as it can because it's being chased by a cheetah. That's literally the only reason. So, for us to achieve our truest potential, we need both sides there.
Yeah.
It's part of the balance.
You can't be a hero without a villain.
Right. So, the point I was getting to is that demons, they want to help you in their own way. But the thing is, people start working with them too much. And that's where I think the whole, oh, you turned your back, sort of like, you got a little too comfortable. That's my personal belief with it. Like, I just feel like there's only certain extreme measures that call for this kind of stuff, where you need something like this, like the analogy I brought up earlier, like where you feel like it's a life or death, like it's a crisis situation. Everything else can wait. So angels, for example, I've actually heard disclaimers from angels because angels are so detached. This is from someone. This is an anecdotal experience. So from what I've like read about angels, is that they're so detached. Say if you ask for like $1 million, for example, they'll get you in a car accident that like messes you up for life. Like, you need to go to the hospital regularly because of your spine, but they won't even think about that because they'll be like, you wanted $1 million. What more do you want from me?
Allegedly.
But and in their mind, that's not in their mind. They're like that's not bad. You're still alive.
Who's telling the story? Who's telling the story?
No, well, that's what happens because at the end of the day, you're not working with human entities. They don't understand humans.
Yeah.
That's why I find it, for regular, everyday spirituality or magic or whatever you want to call it, working with saints is the way to go because they understand the human experience. Ironically, demons understand us more than angels do because they know our capacity for lust and money and gluttony. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's very human things. Like, humans aren't very high vibrational. Let's be real. We're not. We're very primitive beings, and that's why demons understand us a little bit more. But Our goal is to reach our highest potential, so that doesn't matter. We still have to keep it balanced and try to be the best like beings we could possibly be. So that's why, for the most part, I would work with saints or people that have understood the human experience and moved on.
What
Me
are
personally,
what's like a prayer? What's like a prayer that you might say to a saint to help, help you get through the day in the safe, efficient, the best way possible?
so so as far as the prayer, like the specific saints have different like areas of expertise, so it really depends. Like me, a everyday thing would be my guides. So everyone has a spirit team. So they don't really need to venture out beyond spirit team or like saints. People don't have to do that anyway. So in my opinion, the working with angels and demons is like very drastic. Like you need something done like immediately. But for everyday use, it really depends who you're talking to. And it, for the most part, I just wing it. It just has to come from a genuine place of wanting and hoping.
But are you specifically naming someone out loud? Not
Yes.
are you
Yes, it depends. For example, with my guides, I did get names from them, so I will say their names. I do work with Santa Muerte too, so I'd say her name. I work with Virgin of Guadalupe too. So it really depends, but yes, I usually address them by name. It makes it more directed.
Do
Their
you have a
attention is directed.
do
yeah,
you have a
from what
specific like
I get
situation that you use them?
Um, no, not really. I try not to. I'm not really the type of person where I want something now. I only really ask for specific things if it's an emergency. So overall, the generic prayer, if that's what you guys are trying to get at, is like it's more so from a place of thank you than I ask, but I kind of combine both. Like I'll say something
Uh,
along the lines of, "Thank you for helping me achieve my highest good and heart's desire." Highest good and heart's desire, because then I can. Heart's desire is like play, and then highest good is pretty much work, but it's still fulfilling. So that's the most generic thing I say. Thanking for protection. Um, yeah, blessings, things like that. Just like, it really helps to say thank you because we're really blessed to be alive.
to be grateful. Gratitude is one of the most powerful positive energies that we can manifest as people.
Yes,
And you know uh it's a key. Every day I say I'm grateful. I say I'm just happy to have feet. uh
yes,
and my jump roping gets better every day, and everything that I'm doing with the jump rope, people think it's so amazing, and to me I'm like, oh, this isn't shit. I haven't done the backflip off the balance board yet. I'm
hmm
closer and closer to these things that I didn't even thought I would ever be possible for me, and I'm manifesting them more and more every day. Now, I will say that I am praying, a lot more than I ever did in my life. And these, I'm not praying to any demons. I have prayed to, you know, Michael, Uriel, and Raphael and some of the
yeah.
angels. Um, but
Michael is Michael's pretty intense.
that same word, right? I was just going to say the word intense. I was going to say he's an intense motherfucker, right?
Yeah, he really is.
why is that?
His element is fire, and he's very much the least angel-y angel.
But in
uh,
Knock, and when essentially he was the main guy to defeat the Watchers.
yeah,
So
but yeah, he's very intense. I like him though. I mean, he was one of my favorites, but I noticed he was very intense after a while. I was like, oh man.
since I've
And
been praying to the angels and God and meditating a lot more, a lot of things have been manifesting outside of just like, like for example, John and I hooked up and we got this going.
Hmm.
Got my favorite podcaster, Podcast Sunday, Sam Tripoli,
Hmm.
who runs the Tinfoil Hat. He's good friends with Joe Rogan and Eddie Brock,
Oh,
those guys. He's a comedian in LA. And then John he booked today on our podcast the guy that made the movie Level and Next Level, who, in my opinion, is waking so many people up to the lies of NASA and all of their fucking bullshit.
mm.
Like the other day, my son comes home from school and he was scared because an asteroid's going to hit us. His science teacher mentioned it. And,
Why would she say that? That's
well,
kind of that's the kind of stuff you don't tell kids because they'll
but
freak out if it's like 200 years from now.
they're just doing what NASA told them, right? And
Right, right.
it's a fucking lie because they've been saying the same thing since we were all kids, and they're just constantly going to keep saying that shit. And, you
Oh,
know,
speaking of kids,
and
you
yeah, they're lying about everything. And now he's never stressed out about anything space.
so speaking of kids, I just thought about this. You might find this interesting too. Have you ever heard of the theory of the triple soul of a human?
No.
Does that has anything to do with the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit thing?
Yes, in a way. So pretty much if you believe that God has that form, pretty much, and we're made in his image, we have the same kind of a thing going on. Um, so pretty much even as a grown person or adult man, you have three versions of yourself inside of you. So you have your shadow self, your lower self, or your child self, your middle self, which is the ego, who you see or identify as on this earthly plane, and your higher self. And obviously, that's the part of you that's more um, detached from this reality. The part of you that is the Holy Spirit, just kind of experiencing things through you. Um, and pretty much the theory is with Catholicism and Christianity and this polarization that I was just talking about, the shadow self becomes so like suppressed that it actually, and it can't go away. It's a part of who you are, right?
Right.
So because of this, Christianity has made actually people worse. Because if you suppress your shadow long enough, like a child throwing a tantrum, it's gonna burst through and it will manifest in like a fit of rage in real life or a depressive episode or something, you know what I mean? So, violent
Well,
crime or something like that.
because that's like literally the reason why I've needed boxing and martial arts and fighting every day so much of my life, because like I need to get that out in a healthy way, that
Yes,
me not going around and snapping people's necks and ripping their heads off, you know what I mean? So that makes
right.
sense to me.
Yeah. Or like another example is these homophobes at these rallies and stuff like that. Like, and the whole joke is like if someone's really homophobic, they're probably gay. Like that's another
Well,
analogy of like someone suppressing their shadow self.
but but that means that they're still in the closet with themselves too, right?
Yeah, like they don't even realize it themselves. But there's most people do realize it themselves. That's why that gay dating app Grinder said that they tweeted like it's really funny whenever there's a Republican convention somewhere, all of a sudden all the Grinder profiles like start ticking up. Like they're like, They
That's
even tweeted recently that something about Florida. They were like, if these politicians pass this bill in Florida, we're going to expose all the politicians that are using our app. I was like,
God.
wow. I know, right? But that's neither here nor there. Pretty much the shadow self is something that I think a lot of people should explore because in this society, we have a problem where the shadow self is polarized from ourselves, very widespread. And because of that, we have a collective shadow that's very suppressed and it's manifesting in all these crazy ways that we see going on in the world with like poverty or violence and stuff like that. So I feel like on an individual level, if you ever are feeling hopeless, if you just deal with your own shadow and your own issues, it will help the collective. Um, like it could be different for everyone, but there's a lot of things that can be achieved when you explore your shadow self. And you know what's awesome? And I found this out because I did it myself. When you really dig through and heal those childhood wounds or whatever traumatic things may have happened to you, um, you also discover your unlimited potential that you had as a child and all these talents that you used to have and hobbies that you used to have start reemerging as you're healing these parts of yourself. Like for me, like I started gardening a lot more and being outside and getting my hands in the mud or drawing, reading, obviously. But I definitely recommend that for any individual because as a collective that will help a lot. Because that tapping into that side of you that's a scared little boy and healing them is going to unlock so many more things that you can even imagine. For sure.
I agree with pretty much pretty much everything that you've said. You know, I mean, you crushed it, man. I mean, I really appreciate it. Where can one last thing before we close up?
Okay.
Have any other questions that you want to ask them?
Yeah, I do have one because I actually cut him off in the middle. So the devil 6,000 years ago what's the difference? I guess.
So there was two kind of versions of him. There was the one that was a trickster that roamed the earth, right? So not like because when we talk about the devil, we're thinking about nowadays we kind of combined these different entities into one being the devil, right? But in the oldest religious text that gave birth to Christianity, the devil, there was like the devil, the angel, Samael, and then there was Shaitan, which was like a trickster entity that roamed the earth. The trickster entity is more of the one I personally believe in, which there's more than one, is the ones I was talking about that pretend to be other entities and harvest the energy of the masses, pretending to be this evangelical version of God or this Catholic version of God or pretending to be the devil to like harness blood sacrifice. Those are the ones that I believe to be the trickster entities. Um, or it could be as simple as the one that's hanging around someone's house and just like knocking on the walls at night, like, you know, bothering them. It could be any of that kind of situation. That's the actual spiritual entity that I would worry about as a human being on this earth, because those are the ones trying to manipulate humans into being afraid. Like, let's say on a small level, like a one of these entities in the household of someone terrorizing the children, blah blah blah, doing all these things so it can feed off their energy, right? That's on a like small, like,
Yeah,
microcosm. On a macro level, this is like the evangelical church. This is like the cults that we were talking about, providing blood sacrifices. This is, you know, the Catholic Church. Like, this is like, there's versions of these trickster entities harnessing energy on a mass scale that we can't even imagine. And then there's the little ones that are just haunting someone's house. You know, those are the ones that we should be worried about for sure.
interesting. So fucking interesting. Let me ask you this. You know, just two quick questions.
Mm-hmm.
Did you what? Do you know anything about Tartaria?
Like Tartarus?
Well, that's a tie that ties into it. That ties into
Yeah, I know of Tartarus, but I
what
don't know of
Tartaria
Tartaria.
is. the idea that all of these buildings that look like Capitol buildings and all these Roman buildings and the Vatican and all these things were all here for about 1,000 years, even in North America, and the entire narrative of what we've been told is a lie, and all of these buildings harness free energy from the ether, and
Oh yeah.
there was a mud flood. And so with all of these buildings were getting renovated, and we're finding out that they go far, far down in the mud. And there's been a really big effort to hide, so much of our history that honestly, we don't even know if George Washington was a real fucking guy. We don't even know the guy. And this is completely true. And the evidence points to it. Now how if all of this if
I think
all
he was real, but I think he was a Freemason.
how would that tie into the demons and the angels and all of that, if the entire narrative, if the Roman story is just Tartaria rebranded, then where
Well,
where would this tie into that and this technologically advanced people who are harnessing free energy that supposedly could levitate blocks with their mind? They're the ones that built the pyramids. They're the ones that built these buildings that we can't build anymore. And how would that tie into this spiritual nature of demons and
so as far as locations and places of power, that's more of a working with energies that are unconscious. So that kind of situation is a little different because you can harness the energy of a location and use with it whatever you want to do. Like for example, in Mexico, a lot of places where they tore down temples, um, they would build churches. You know what I mean? Like they would use those same places of worship. Some people say it was for colonization to rip the spirit away from these people, their heart and soul, and then put a replacement there so they would convert faster. So whether it was done on purpose or by accident or for strictly colonization or esoteric reasons or both, there's a
or,
method. There's definitely a
or
method. It's not an
out
accident.
there and they just said they built it.
Hmm?
Or the church was always there and they just said they built it and it's much older than they're telling you.
Or that it really depends. Like in Italy, it would probably that's the case, but there's places in Europe where they would have a pagan like place of worship and they would build a church over it. Like they would knock it down, build a church over it. It's everywhere. It's crazy. Um, but so John, you said when you are doing magic, do you have to disclose what you're doing?
Yeah. So like do you have to disclose it so that they have the option of backing out of it?
Who's they? Like the spirit
Uh,
or whoever?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess.
Well, okay, so as far as magic goes, you don't have to work with a spirit per se if you don't want to. You could very much work with your own spirit or your own energy, just FYI. There's ways of doing that, but the only outside. Okay, so the only thing is with that, yes, you're going to have to because it's part of the direction. Um, you're going to have to say what you want or what you're wishing for or however you want to say it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to execute. And if they do execute, they're going to trigger a sequence of butterfly effects to make it happen, and you're not really going to like them sometimes. It really depends. So a lot of disclosures, we're saying be careful what you wish for because you have to acknowledge that in order to get you there, they're going to have to shift your reality somehow. And that could be as simple as you stubbing your toe, or it could be as complicated as you getting in a car accident, or nothing could happen at all, and it would just be a seamless transition because you weren't asking for something that was that hard to achieve. It really depends. That's the only disclosure I would say as far as that goes. But like I said, you don't have to really work with any specific spirit to work with magic. You could use your own energy. So you don't have to. That's how I do it usually, or how I started doing it. So I will say that. But I will say this too. You know how I was talking about shadow work and working with your shadow?
Mm-hmm.
The first thing they recommend before you start any of this is doing that. Because if your energy is imbalanced, and most people's energies are imbalanced, as I said earlier, because of the way society is, and you start doing magic, your magic will also be imbalanced. So they recommend that you do some soul searching, so to speak, through various meditations and so on and so forth, to align your own energies and yourselves, so that when you do move on to doing actual spell work or what have you, it's more effective and not as sloppy.
Makes sense. I mean, you want to take this shit serious. You don't want to, run before you can crawl.
Right, exactly. And that's why I took so long to before I actually started doing it, because I actually took it seriously and I did the shadow work first. A lot of people just want to get to the fun part, but the shadow work is not fun, but it definitely paid off, and I'm glad I did it.
So let's say, John, you're going to tell John and I, give us some advice to get through our shadow work before we can start doing some magic. And, and is manifestation and magic kind of the thing? I mean,
So manifestation is like idle magic. Like you're doing it on standby, so to speak. Like when a computer goes to sleep, but it's still kind of running a program in the background.
yeah.
That's what manifestation is. It's kind of like you're making your subconscious constantly do it while you're out here just running your errands. The manifestation is a very much state of mind thing. It's actually the hardest way of doing it, in my opinion, because reprogramming your subconscious requires a lot of meditation for me personally. But it's very effective once you get it down, but it's pretty hard.
Yeah, for me, it's been just training in martial arts and discipline and running a lot and, jumping rope a lot and stuff like that. So, definitely is not the easy way to do it, So if John and I were going to start doing magic, not asking from any outside sources, but to do our dark work to get what would be your recommendation for us? Like the first thing we should do?
First, just start with meditations where you become more present and in tune with your body, which is a basic meditation, and usually start you there. And then move on to meditations where you picture yourself somewhere else, like a happy place, quote unquote. And then there's actual shadow work meditations. And those build off of the two I just told you. But you pretty much travel within your own mind and your own inner universe, or whatever you want to call it, and look for that shadow self of you that's usually hiding somewhere.
Well, I do the first two every day. I do the first two.
Oh.
So now I would be at the third part,
right?
Which the interesting part now, right?
Yes. So this is a disclosure I would say for anyone starting shadow work. And this is why some people think meditation can be more harmful rather than good. But this is because, in my personal opinion, once you start, you have to keep going, or else you'll be stuck in this perpetual state of like starting the shadow work and starting to lift these things and reveal these things of yourself, and then just stopping there and not dealing with it. people discover some pretty fucked up things. They might have suppressed memories of things that happened to them and they don't even remember. They have to take these things into account and really ask themselves if they want to dig this stuff up. And if the answer is yes, then you have to keep going. Like, there's no stopping. If you stop, you might have anxiety issues for the rest of your life, or you might have a psychotic break. Who knows? It really depends how messed up it is. But if for most people, it's not that bad. So there's nothing to worry about. But if you suspect there's something deep going on, just take that into consideration and that you have to keep going.
In my opinion, there would be no way for us to reach our full potential as people unless we discovered these things that might be hiding we don't know about.
Yep.
Right. So, I mean, that makes total perfect sense to me. And, you know, it's very this has been a very fascinating conversation.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? I actually, in these books I read, they literally said one of the biggest rules was never, ever work with a demon if you haven't done your shadow work. And they explained why. And they said, because when you ask for something, this demon trying to understand you is going to be like, well, why do you want this? And they're going to start pulling things from you to figure out why you want this specific thing. And they might pull on something from your shadow that you didn't know was there. Makes people so uncomfortable. So uncomfortable. They're very good at getting in your subconscious to try to understand you. And that...
I'm not going to be fucking with any demons.
No,
100%.
Just for all of our listeners.
Like for example, like these worlds that we have inside of us that I said, the higher self, the middle self, and the shadow self. Yeah. These are actual spiritual realms. We exist in all three of these realms. The middle self is Earth with its own spiritual realm, the higher self, and then the lower self. The lower self is their sort of forte. That's the most like their realm. You know what I mean? So when people don't do their shadow work and they try to work with these beings, not a good experience.
Let me ask you this, Andres. What do you think about all the 666s that these trust fund dorks have embedded in our science literature? Like, is that just to make fun of us?
Maybe.
Or
they could be...
In their opinion, they're not really invoking any... It's not... You know, like you said, people say football, that, you know, maybe they believe that people are helping invoke their agenda and there's these spirits that they believe in. But from what you've read and what you've studied, you know, that's all bullshit.
It could be, because there will be a lot of false flags. They want you to look over here, so you won't look over here. You know what I mean? So you got to take that into account. So from what I've read, yes, it would have seen. I don't want to say 100% because I don't know, but from what I've read, I would say I'm inclined to believe so. Yes.
I mean, what would all these 666s putting in our science literature? I mean, most people have no clue. They've never looked any of this up, and I found like 70 of them, including like how fast the Earth is going around the sun, supposedly 66616 miles an hour. You know, the speed of sound in knots is 666 miles per hour. The tilt of the Earth is 66.6 degrees. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's carbon is the building block of life, supposedly they tell you in science, and it's 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. So, I mean, it's so funny how, like, when you're growing up, you don't pay attention to any of this stuff, but once you're awake, you see all the signs, you see all the revelation of method. And you think they're just making fun of us by putting all those 666s in there and being like, yeah, we believe in science, here's all the info, and then they got 666 in every single fucking thing?
It might be a pattern of nature that coincides with some sort of spiritual meaning, though, for sure. So I'm not sure. It might be real and not a coincidence, I want to say, but it really depends, because you have to take into account that the creation of everything involved one entity breaking itself up into thousands of microcosms, and those things leave behind patterns. So it really depends. It really depends. I don't think it's a bad thing that those things might be true. It might just reflect some sort of sequence that we haven't deciphered yet.
In my opinion, I mean, they put all that stuff in there purposely because we're not spinning around the sun at all. Like, I mean, let me ask you this: is the Earth round? Are we spinning through space, or are we on an infinite plane? What you would call it flat Earth, which I don't like that name, but
so,
what do you think?
You're not gonna. You're gonna think this is so weird for someone to say, but I have left my body before, and I've seen the Earth as a round sphere spinning around the sun, and I'm not gonna get into it too much, but I've.
One question: were you hanging out with the demons, or was it an angel that took you?
And by accident. It happened by accident. And apparently there was a carbon monoxide leak in my house for like about a month while I was having these weird dreams. So,
well,
yeah, my body.
And some self-conscious, indoctrination coming forward in your brain while you're having carbon monoxide poisoning by your own account. In my professional, undoctoral opinion, that's exactly what was happening to you.
Well, I saw myself sleeping and stuff. It was like I was moments away from death, like just sleeping in my room at night. So I don't know. Do with that what you will. My sister had similar dreams.
I really appreciate it, Andres. You fucking crushed it, man. Respect. I really appreciate you coming on and tell everyone where we can find you if you have a podcast and an Instagram and a Facebook or anything like that. Let people know where they can find you and maybe learn, what you have to teach.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram as a BrujoXOXO. And then one last thing to think about before I head out, you should look into the time that Jesus referred to himself as the morning star. You should look into that. You'd find that interesting.
Is that do you know what verse that's in the Bible, or
I can find it and send it to you guys. But
yeah,
look into that. You'll find that interesting.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, man.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Killed it. God bless.
See you later.